Welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we are talking with John Luizzi about managing ransomware events. John, great first and second segment there. Lots of good information. I want to build on something that you mentioned in near the end of segment two, bringing in different teams. How do we bring in teams like disaster recovery or business continuity teams and plans? How do we get them involved and what should they do? What's their part in this?
Well, I mean, should be part of your crisis management team, right? So associated with that, like for our case, right? I mean, business continuity. So, while the IT forensic teams would be off doing their work associated with trying to mitigate and remove the risks associated with an attack, right? It's my role and responsibility to keep the business running and to coordinate all the business functions. So, business continuity plans that have been developed, potentially as workaround strategies while we have this business interruption would be business continuity's responsibility to keep the business going during that time and providing them resources to be able to do that and be essentially business continuity would be the liaison between the business functions and what is actually transpiring with the crisis manager team and the mitigation of the attacks. So that's how we function. That's how I function associated with that. But so business continuity still has a primary role in managing all the business aspects of maintaining continuity, even though at that point it's probably in a limited mode. But
Mhm.
it is, what it is, for us, it's not an option for us to be, to drop off the grid. Essentially, we just have to maintain some level of viability, some level of market presence, and that's for, the confidence, for the confidence of our customers, of our suppliers, and just overall maintain our business as we move forward, right? So to
Yeah.
get us through the situation. So
Well, I wanted to ask that question specifically because I remember a few security incidents quite a few years ago, back in early 2000s, where disaster recovery, business continuity were not included when there was a security event, whether it be denial of service or whatever. They were not even notified that, hey, there's an event, just to give you a heads up, whether we had anything to do or not. They weren't even included in that. And it always bugged me going, well, what if this escalates? All of a sudden, you're just going to pick up the phone and surprise the rest of the organization with, hey, by the way, you have to activate your continuity plan. And they're going to have no context of what's going on, no idea of what the situation is or what's required of them. They're just going to receive this notice. And I said, that's not going to be good. And that's not going to be the way to get them wanting to work with you by you just ignoring them.
yeah, I mean, our protocol here is that as soon as our IT team identifies some type of, anomaly situation that potentially has a business impacting potential, that they would notify me. So at least I'm on notice. And so if I have to start thinking about how I would execute some type of business response, we're already prepared to do that. And then obviously, should these situations escalate, what we need to do that, then we would go ahead and start all the processes necessary for that. But yeah, I mean, there's no way you couldn't have business continuity, as part of this effort. It's not just an IT issue because the
Mhm.
IT issue will potentially take, if you look at the historically how long ransomware attacks, none of these are, what I would call short in duration, if you know what I mean. They can last several days, and I've seen some of them last months as far as, the mitigation of these things. So what does a business do during that time period? And they need to provide some level of viability, of functionality. So your business continuity person would be the person that would be helping support the business to try to get them through that business interruption, even though it may be at a limited capacity mode. So
Yeah, I agree. I didn't understand it myself, and I kept harping that point. When you've
yeah.
all got to work together, that this is affecting the entire organization, not just one little group called information security, which is what they were called at the time. I said,
And a lot of that is done way before the attack happens. I mean, that's just part of just, developing and building a program. It kind of goes back to our executive support discussion, the last time we talked, right? It's really about making sure your program is firmly established as far as understanding what its role and responsibility is given any type of event, not only just, the normal, disaster stuff that we deal with, but yeah, a ransom or cyber type of situation is another business interruption. So therefore, it's integral that your business continuity program be part of that overall response team. So
Now, in the second segment, you talked about an example there where I guess you can call it a hacker was blackmailing in a kind of, I don't know the right term, but
A third party,
yeah,
right?
blackmailing a third party to make uh, the company they actually did the ransomware attack with pay up. So how, if I discover that Alex Fullick Incorporated has a ransomware attack, how do I deal with and what should I be telling my external partners because I've got their data?
It's essentially you just need to help them understand the fact that what has transpired for your, you've been compromised in some way, shape, or form, right? And at that point, to a particular point in time, allowing them to make sure that they have also been, do their own internal investigation for their own organization, see if there's been any type of breach on their part associated with that. But it is your responsibility if you know that their data has been compromised, within your, even though it was under your responsibility to advise them essentially what has transpired and to what degree associated with that, to what degree the exposure was, so that they can also be on alert associated with how that potentially is going to impact their business, in addition to how now it's impacted your business, right? So, I mean, and again, that's a obviously a complicated discussion that is best to have legal counsel leading that overall, for incident response to that particular type of event, right? Is a perfect example of how legal counsel would help you navigate through that.
Mhm. I'm curious how that would happen though. The reason being is if Alex Fullick Inc. is compromised, and I've got hundreds, if not thousands, of different partners out there. I can't make hundreds or a couple of thousand phone calls. My lawyer would just fall to the floor, exhausted halfway through trying to make all those phone calls. Is it okay to make a conference call and invite everybody or a press release or how would
That
you
is
go about communicating?
that's typically what happens. Again, your legal counsel would advise you, but
Mm,
technically it would be some type of either like a conference call or something, or just an email to your clients, and this advising them what the situation, what has transpired, and what are you doing about it,
right.
and so I mean that's how that would be. I personally wouldn't do anything in a public forum at that point, right? I think you
Yeah,
don't have to, but I think that there is a responsibility there to communicate with your with all of your clients, and again under an attorney kind of guided discussion. So
yeah. The reason I asked that is because a member of the security team at one of my previous clients said that we would call our partners. I said, really? One-on-one? Yeah, yeah, it's important to have that one-on-one relationship. And I went, that's impossible. I know how many partners we have. I've got the BIA stuff right here beside me. I said, there's no way you can do that.
there's in that situation there may be certain ones that I would say are larger than others or more strategic in nature to your business that you may want to have
Mm,
that one-on-one conversation than potentially some of the smaller clients that an email saying, hey, this is what happened to us and we're working to mitigate it and that type of thing, right? And just covering it that way. But you know again, your strategic customers and your clients, and I think some of those sometimes a phone call would be a hell of a lot better than actually just receiving an email from somebody like that, with someone that's that important to you, right? So
true, like the government or something, you're not going to send them an email. You're going to call
there
them
you
right
go.
away. And
There you
which
go.
leads me to another call that you would be making, law enforcement.
Mhm.
When would you be calling them? Because I have heard and read articles, and these things get mentioned, but follow up is just absolutely terrible. People just throw this stuff out there. That there are some laws, potential laws out there that says if you don't notify law enforcement within an X period of time, you can be fined. So when should you be involving law enforcement?
I mean, as soon as you identify the fact that you have been ransomed, I mean, immediately it would contact them and bring them into the investigation. Now, what's also important is that you establish a relationship with your local law enforcement, and I'm talking at the FBI level, right? So that we're not strangers in just meeting on when this occurs, right? So they have at least an understanding of who you are, what type of data that you have, what's your business, that type of thing. So potentially they have resources available to them that potentially could start the process a lot sooner, a lot earlier, if they kind of have a better understanding of your business, instead of that day you call them up and say, hey, we've been ransomed. It's like, well, who are you and what do you do for a living? I mean, that type of thing. So having those pre-positioned discussions is really important for any of your external partners, right? But particularly law enforcement, because obviously they deal with such diversity of different types of companies, and whether it's personal or business, that type of thing. So again, but having them notified as quickly as possible, associated with that, once you've identified the fact that you have been ransomed, and essentially, because they can provide you support for that. And again, it becomes a crime scene when that is when you're calling them, and they may seize assets. A lot of folks don't realize the fact that when they mean seizing assets, they could be taking your laptops, they could be
Mm.
taking your cell phones. I mean, so as a result, in companies and their response associated with having a response, effective response for a ransomware attack, they need to have a strategy to replace their devices as well. And
That's an
depending upon a
interesting
large
point.
company, you'd have to have hundreds of be able to go out and buy hundreds of laptops or cell phones or iPads or whatever those things are. So that's an important piece that a lot of companies don't get. The fact is that if you because of the fact that potentially you've had this intrusion in your network, it could have infiltrated all of your laptops, and you could go through a process where you push the reset button, but on all of your systems. But if the malware is still in your desktops or your other devices, it's just going to repopulate your network, and you're back in the same place that you were before. So
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I don't think very many people point out the fact that you could be activating your contingency plans. You could be doing all these different things only to have law enforcement come along and take away, all your
right,
phones and devices. And who knows how long it'll take to replace those.
right,
Nobody's going to have 1,000 in a storage room at the back of the building because, that's
right.
just not
So
feasible.
yeah, and like I say, I mean, part of the decision to do that is, because it just takes so long to clean all these devices, right, and restore them and reset them. So in a lot of ways, it's just, hey, let's just go out and buy new and start fresh. And there needs to be a strategy in place in order to be able to do that, to be able to facilitate restoration. Sure.
Well, we only have, 2 minutes left. So do you have any final thoughts on crisis management leadership, managing a ransomware event they'd like to
No,
share?
I think that for people that that are continuity professionals. I mean, I think that we really need to spend the time to make sure that we have the right response teams in place, and everybody needs to understand what their roles and responsibility is during this type of situation, right? It is a very fast-paced event. It happens just like that, instantaneously, so you really need to be prepared for it. But I think that it's making sure that you have aligned the appropriate stakeholders, and they know exactly what their role and responsibility is, making sure you have the right external partners, make sure you have relationships with public relations firms, you know who your insurance brokers are, you know who law enforcement is, you have a forensic response team ready to go, you have a ransomware negotiator. I mean, that is your extended team that needs to be part of your overall strategy, and make sure that your legal counsel understands their role and responsibility, their leadership role, right? And making sure they have the appropriate what I would call external partners as well that can help support them as well. So I mean, it's a lot of this, getting through this, is a lot of it is how much you do prior to, if you
Mhm.
know what I mean. So
Yeah.
so
We may go over a minute or so, but I want to ask this question.
sure.
Is there anything we should not do? That
Anything.
if you do that, you're going to muck the whole thing up.
um Anything you should not do. I can't really think of anything that you shouldn't do. I could think of only thing that you should do, to be honest with you. Um, let's put it this way: don't underestimate it. I mean, I think that's one
Mm.
of the things that you should not do, is do not underestimate the impact of this, because this is a very, very real threat for every business, today, right? And you should not underestimate its impact on your business, on your and how devastating it can be, because it can last for such a long period of time because of the necessary forensics that has to go on in order to be able to restore operations. You don't want to underestimate what that level of effort is. So
Yeah, because if you underestimate, you have probably got a bunch of assumptions in play there. Oh, this won't happen, that won't happen. We're fine here, but not there. And that's when you create an even worse situation for yourself, because then
yeah,
you have underestimated everything.
I mean, the complexity of networks and systems nowadays is far greater than it's ever been, right? And there's so many what I would call entry points into that, and vulnerabilities in networks and things like that. So you just don't want to underestimate the potential of those attacks, and what they can mean to your business, and what exactly, the level of effort that you're going to need to recover from it. So
And on that note, we've come to the end of today's show. John, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you sharing your time and expertise and talking about leadership during a ransomware event.
Alex, it's always great to see you, and I can't wait for our next discussion. So
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sure there's going to be a third one,
perfect.
or I'll run
Great.
into a conference somewhere.
There you go. Cool.
So thank you so much, John, and everyone watching and listening. Stay prepared, everybody.
Thanks, Alex.
If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.